Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Jun. Today we have amazing speaker and guest and Dr. Tina. Dr. Tina is from getting a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Rochester.
I have one, yes.
You have one. Mm-hmm. And among many others, not just one PhD. Could you tell us the two other titles?
Actually, I should say I don't have other PhDs.
Oh, okay.
I have postdoctoral training in nutritional and psychiatric epidemiology.
Nutritional and psychiatric, epidemiology. Mm-hmm. Plus, you have done many other different type of modalities and certification. So, which ones do you have? Motion code?
Yes, motion code. I'm a body code practitioner as well. Mm-hmm. I dabble into Eastern medicine as well. I don't have an official certificate yet, but I'm in training, and have picked up a lot of other methods through being able to use spirit guides and so forth in energy medicine. So there's a lot of other things I've kind of brought into the fold, not professionally, but I know a lot about a lot of herbs and so forth as well. So. Wow. Yeah.
So we got to talk about the many deeper, content and knowledge and information that will be shared today. Mm-hmm. And first one, most important things that we have been discussing from the previous episodes about the mind. Mm-hmm. So how this unconscious, subconscious mind, how this dictating our life and reality. So could you kind of explain to us a little bit about how this deep unconscious mind influencing our the realities?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our subconscious mind influences us in so many different ways. It drives the show and sort of like kind of background programming that we may not be completely aware of that dictates how we show up in life. It also dictates how we heal or whether we heal. It dictates our ability to make money. There's so much in that subconscious that we need to tap into and find until we are able to manifest what we want. And 95% of what goes on, and I think that number really can vary depending on the person, right? I think like with the Dalai Lama, somebody who's very conscious, it's less. But the point I'm trying to say is that a huge part of our brain or our mind is sort of focused on the subconscious or is in the subconscious, and only about 5% for most people is conscious. And it's really interesting. One thing that we can think about when we think about this is that we blink all the time. That's going on in our mind, but not consciously, right? But we need it to just keep our eyes moist and so forth, right? Or our subconscious mind also dictates what's called proprioception, which is our ability to know where we are in space. Right. Yes. And if you lose that, you can fall over. So, for example, yeah.
Wow. So this is where many people get struggling about how can I change the reality that I'm having these issues, right? This is how I'm perceiving, my, for example, relationship at work, right? That this is my coworker or the manager. Really very negative about anything I do, right? But that's how we're perceiving it. We think maybe because the manager reminds you about father, right? Being told, no, you shouldn't be doing this. No, you have to be doing this way. It always feels like being suppressed when the boss comes through it to say the same things. We get this reminder always, isn't it? That's
definitely. I can think of an example when. A housemate, for example. I shouldn't say this. We're going to cut right there. I'm not going to talk about other people. But yes, definitely. Your reality or how you perceive things can be based on past experiences that you may not be consciously aware of. And early in childhood, it can be even before your conscious memory. And it oftentimes I find when I work with clients, what I do is I release, root causes. And so we can go back to, either early life, but we also, I find that the most subconscious things are epigenetic, which means that they go back in generations, and they can go back quite a few generations.
So this is where trouble happens, isn't it? Not just our parents' issues. Where parents receive this information come from the grandparents. and then so on by great grandparents.
Yeah.
Being passed on to how many generations, as long as mankind existed, right?
Exactly. And I think that that's why there's so many different stereotypes or personality types that are associated with each culture. For example, like, the Jews are known for certain stereotypes. They may be positive or negative, right? And Chinese or Asians are known for a different stereotype, and Africans may be a different stereotype, or African Americans is a different stereotype, right? And all these stereotypes are rooted in epigenetic experiences and past, it could be past trauma.
Yes.
So I know that the Jews have a lot of trauma in their background, to have to escape from multiple Holocausts.
Yes.
Asians, I had a client, for example, who had, we were working on, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember that he was struggling, and it was linked back to a belief backed by his great grandpa from the time of the Opium Wars.
Wow,
and there was really interesting,
yes.
There was a really interesting relationship, because Westerners were basically dictating what goes on in China, right? And there was some resentment that he was feeling, that he was totally unconsciously aware of, that was influencing his ability to thrive in the United States.
That totally does pass on to the generation, right? Through the memories from the DNA.
Yeah. But he's totally unaware of it, It's just, it was fascinating. So
now, what we're going to do about it, right? This is one of the big problems that many clients that come see you. Could you give us what type of patients and clients do you see, the challenges that they bring on in relation to mind and in relation to these blocks and traumas?
I see clients for a huge variety of things. Mostly these days, it ends up being physical issues, but at the same time, they also come to me for mental and emotional issues as well. And I love helping people with both. The methods I have are very, very powerful for both. So there's almost no typical at this time, at this point. Earlier on in my practice, most people were coming from emotional things, but now that I have advertised more that I'm a holistic brain health practitioner, I guess it's better advertising, that more people are coming for things like neurological issues as well. But regardless, what I do is I tap into the subconscious mind, and it by using a method called muscle testing or applied kinesiology. And just by getting yes/no answers, what I do is I basically play 20 questions with the brain or the body or whatever it is. The body code gives me access to a huge number of underlying imbalances to deal with. Kind of started there, but I've expanded into what I've learned from Eastern medicine, for example, and what I know from my training in neuroscience. And sometimes there are things that I don't know, and I have to go look up the PubMed, the literature to try to figure out. So I use that to sort of zero in on where the problems are, the root causes are. And then sometimes I release barriers. We just have energies, everything comes down to an energy, and we can release that until it's gone. Sometimes I have more expedient methods, like I actually channel frequenries, and frequency medicine is very powerful. And so I love doing that. And I have some other methods that are even less traditional, but I can do things like psychic surgery with my spirit guides, which I know sounds really crazy. I had a hard time believing it. That's a very deep level, but it's, in the end, if when we approach in a certain way, if you can get the result and the person experience the result, that's all matters in the end, right? That's what matters. Exactly. Yeah. I've had some really powerful experiences with it. I had a client, and I'm trying to remember the disease she had. She was age 11. And no, she was age 17. She looked like an 11-year-old. She was age 17. She was functioning more like an 11-year-old, barely, not really. She'd go to school, and she wasn't able to have much conversation, yes or no's, and very limited in terms of her ability to respond. And she wasn't, she didn't do chores. She just was not functioning very well. And in using all the methods we had, she started having more conversations and talking to her mom more and telling her about what's going on in school and making friends for the first time, like ever. And she started. I noticed that she started to change. Like she was losing a little weight. Her mom was very concerned about her weight issue, which was related to the underlying diagnosis that she had. But she was starting to wear makeup and look good. I mean, like she started to look more like a more mature 17-year-old. She was starting to do errands on her own, starting to exercise on her own. She was just getting more engaged in school. I mean, there were just so many different things that happened.
So what was that shift that happened to her?
There wasn't one thing. There was just a lot of different things that I addressed root causes of.
So layer by layers.
Layer by layer, yeah. But if there's a genetic issue, that's something that I can get at as well. In fact, I want to say that not 100% of the time, but it doesn't work 100% of the time the first time around. It works most of the time, but not 100% of the time the first time around. But I can't think of actually one incident where it didn't work entirely and then I just give up on the genetic aspect. But it is dependent on what's the universal knowledge. Everything I do is dependent on universal knowledge. So if it's not known out there, then I can't tap into it. So if I had to help somebody change a gene that the sequence wasn't known about, that would be harder.
Right.
But I have other methods to get around that. There are other ways to we can actually change our genes by changing our belief systems too.
Right.
So
that's right.
So there's a lot of different kind of methods to approach these things.
I think I remember Deepak Chopra says we have 25,000 genes. Right? In the genes, there's a 5% we have already been mutated, so we cannot do anything about it. Someday, potentially, we can cut it off.
I'm going to say that's not true. I mean, I can do something about it.
At that point of time, previously, probably 5-10 years ago. Now, some of the technology, the way that we can do, so you can cut it, you can paste it, you can modify it, right? We can really able to tap into the healing, even if somebody has mutations.
And I can do that energetically.
Wow, did you hear that? Yes, energetically.
Energetically.
It's possible to able to help them mutate the genes to flip upside down. Yes.
Yeah.
I think most of the components is that all 95%. We are all have a power to change. This is where the environment, everything's influencing it. So now we can decode those influence to really unlock those. What was the negative? What's the toxin? Where the stress coming from? Right? So there, as long as we can take those stresses out to help them to guide through to heal. This is where really the juice of all this conscious healing is.
Yeah. And when you think of stress, I like to think of it in terms of what's called the allostatic load, right? The allostatic load is really, it involves not just the emotional stress, but it involves, as you mentioned, toxins, pathogens, anything that we're exposed to that's physical as well, that stresses our body, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. So toxins and pathogens are the most common, but they're, I think toxins and pathogens actually summarizes most of the other things, but also inherited stuff, genetics and so forth.
And then I heard that recently, or this year, that you have been challenged by some of the talking about the pathogens.
Yes.
So could you tell us about your experience, or actually just the real experience that she had and almost getting over it, right?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping. I have been very negatively affected by mold toxicity this year. First in an apartment that I lived in, and I was getting intuitive hits about it, but what happened was my cat got really, really sick from it. And then I was living with my cat and she got me really sick from it. And I'd spent so much time trying to help her heal that I got, I was very traumatized because the molds were very dangerous and very scary, terrifying. So all of that made me very sick. Actually, I was getting pretty sick, and then I bought a condo thinking that I could escape from all this, mold, and really have control over my life. And 2 weeks after I moved into this condo, mold was found in. I actually intuited, but that there was mold in the chimney as well as the attic, and it manifested very, very quickly. Overnight, I had to run from my condo and haven't been able to live there since. That was in June.
As soon as you bought it, you found out.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah, it was like it seemed clean. I was getting it that it was safe when I moved in. I was getting it was safe when I bought the place, but something was happening between the time I committed to buying it and the time I was there, and it got more and more dangerous. And while there was so much in my chimney, and still is, unfortunately. I've been having a hard time getting the mediators to. They said it was done, and I said no, it's not. And a chimney sweep went
they
back.
They can do as much as possible, but they can't really go into every single details.
Right. So the point I'm trying to make, is that I've been hit very hard by mold toxicity and been exposed to very, very dangerous pathogens and been very immunocompromised by it all. While I know what I can do to heal, it's been overwhelming in terms of the number of things I've had to do to heal all at once. But I've become a much stronger and better healer because of it, and had to really learn how to use faster and faster methods to heal.
Yeah, I think having those experiences in trauma, the life experience that can be very, very serious and devastating at the point. But when we overcome, this type of challenges, this is where our strengths, the expansion happen. But in order to do that, we need to really expand our awareness. Because before we didn't know what the mold can do. Now we know that mold can be, it's so toxic.
So dangerous.
As a matter of fact, I was affected by the black mold. And then my lung was affected big time. So I know as a patient myself.
And I had so many, the most deadly molds. And I'm still not sure they're completely gone. That's my fear. But last week I was so sick, and I couldn't even have the interview, right? So this week today I'm having my best day I've had for a long time. I was unable to work for months, and I shouldn't say I'm barely working, but I was unable to work for months, and it's terrifying, but it did force me to expand my awareness, and the nice thing is that I've learned so much from it, and I've gotten more powers from it as I've prayed to my spirit guides to help me figure out how to address these issues, and gotten wisdom. It forced me to expand into things like, not that I know about it, but it forced me to seek out practitioners that I would have never sought out before, like an Ayurvedic specialist, for example.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And you tried
homeopathy, which I never had done before. So
there's so many tools available, hitting a different angle, whether physical aspect, energetically, and then there's emotions, and there's a mental, psychological. Then there's a consciousness approach, right? And frequency. There's all that, because we are more than just a three-dimensional body. And there's so many other different ways of thinking about healing and medicine that we're not aware of. Like, for example, the Ayurvedic, I'm getting their Ayurvedic energies that I'm not aware of, and ideas. And I love just learning about like how different cultures think. The Chinese have such a different way of approaching medicine than Westerners do, and it's so valuable. Look at acupuncture surviving since 6,000 BC, and it looks like torture, and yet people keep going back to acupuncture. And why? Is because it works. And so we need to be open to these different modalities and ways of thinking. We need Amazonians to come and teach us what they're doing. As well, they're in the ancient approach. There are folk remedies. There are things that it's available in their jungle, right? But it's not available here. But there's a secret. The Mother Earth, right? Universe. They provided for us. So our job is to unlock those, right?
So there's, I don't have enough lifetimes to learn everything that I want to learn about medicine and how to heal in just like all these different cultures. But again, the clients that do the best expand their awareness. They do.
Yes. So if you give us the 3 tips, do you think people who are watching having a challenged by this emotional, mental aspect, or sometimes say the physical, mold, some type of pathogens, what would you say that people don't know where to go, because obviously allopathic doctor has a limitation. They can only detect probably 2-3 parasites. More than that, even they don't know unless you go to pathologists who really do some type of a deep study, right?
Right.
So where can we start? Where can we start? All those conscious healing.
That's a great question. I think that it's interesting because I'm with my whole condo situation. It was remedied, I was told it was remedied, and I know that it's not safe. And I hired a mold tester, and he said it was safe, and I was like, no, it's not safe. I know that. The reason why is if you understand the limitations of testing, then like I talked to the microbiologist and it said, I know that I'm experiencing symptoms, and I know that it's not safe. I know he tested that it was safe. And I asked her why, and she's like, well, these tests aren't sensitive enough. And that's a huge aspect that's true with testing methods in general.
Right.
In
There's
medicine,
all limitations.
There's limitations.
MRIs, through X-rays, through anything. They have a limitation.
Exactly. So sometimes a test, may not have enough counts of something. For example, these molds, like they were tracing total volume, not specifics. For example. But there could also be things that are not even seen or heard. For example, like a lot of testing is done by visually, right? But what if it's something that doesn't show up on a slide, that maybe is emitting a sound that we can't hear, right? It's outside of our frequency levels, or maybe it's creating an energy that somehow can hurt us, but we don't. So there's different assay methods that need to be applied, and they aren't always applied in Western medicine, and probably not in any medicine, right? So different ways of like getting the root cause need to be addressed, and know that if you are experiencing symptoms and things aren't right, just because a doctor or somebody says to you that they're not finding anything or calling you crazy, right? That often is what happens. It does not mean that you're crazy. It means that they haven't figured out the root cause, and it doesn't, that. So that I think that if there was just one thing I wanted to say, that is, trust your own instincts, right? Trust your instincts, and just know that every modality has its limitations. Mine does too, in terms of my ability to see things. And the more different approaches, the more different sensory systems. For example, I want to say dogs, dogs that can sniff out COVID, right? Dogs have an incredible nose, right? Yes. We know that, right? And so do most animals. They have much better noses than we do. So they have a different point of view than we do, because so much was based on their nose, And too bad that they don't talk, right? They could tap into so much wisdom that we could access, it would be great to access. But it's just an example of like how limited we are by, the frequencies that we're able to see and hear and smell and so forth.
So really the key is that, because we've been told this is the way we should be thinking, right? What parents said when I was little. Well, no, I think my parents are a little bit society. Well, this is the Western way to think about it. Outside of that, that's not something that we should be even thinking, right?
Right.
So now we know that more than physical body, more than allopathic medicine, so many things are available.
Yeah, and different cultures
different
too.
Culture,
I mean,
different background.
The more we're open to different cultures and ways of thinking, the more we're expanding our awareness. And it's I always find it so interesting the way people from different cultures think, because it gives me wisdom. And makes me reflect on like, it's interesting that I've always been thinking it this way, but there's a different way to think about it. So.
Yes, I agree, because I was so fortunate to coming from Asian, culture, which is Japan, and then being here in U.S. Almost 3 decades now. So now I can see the way we think. Now I learned the way Western thinks a lot, right? So then I can see which part of the beauty, we have a lot of great, background, the things that we could be embracing it. So then you can marry those things, right? Ancient wisdom, wiser,
exactly.
yes.
Yeah. And I lived in Hong Kong growing up, so it gave me a different perspective.
Yes. So you really understand that too.
Yeah.
So that's the key, that our really conversation is here, that what we like to everybody to encourage is that limiting belief. We learn a lot of things from the parents or from the culture, from background. But we need to step outside of that limiting box that we have. Right?
Yeah.
Really kind of get curious about what's out there, and then use the thinking mind, asking why always, right?
Yes.
Well, why this, that? Well, how so? This is where things that start opening up.
Exactly. Yeah. Being curious is just a fabulous trait, I think. I think that's probably one of my best traits, is because I'm always asking about why. And it gets me in trouble with a lot of it's gotten me trouble in jobs and so forth, like, there have been a lot of people that don't like that, but it expands my awareness. It does, and it doesn't allow me to just, accept what I'm being told, which is good, I think. I think it's important to kind of trust that,
and trust the instincts,
and when you get those answers,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes a why can give you answers and make you respect whoever you're working with more, and sometimes you realize excuse me, sometimes you realize that you're the person that you've told that needs that the person that has told you that certain thing is limited in their way of thinking, and that's okay.
That's okay. So there's no point to judging it, because we all have a limitation. So
We all do.
Western medical doctor, but here we are. We are trying to do the best we can. Each person, each angle, anyway, right? So as long as we are heart centered, we are really for the people, to really find the cause of the problem that you are suffering. This is we are all as healthcare providers and practitioners, healers and doctors. We are passionate about it, so we cannot forget the essence of why we're doing what we're doing. Right? Yeah.
Definitely. Beautifully said. Yeah.
Yes. So the full episode here, that please come to quantumdecoders.com/CAN, CAN, Conscious Awakening Network, and you can see the more information to learn from Dr. Tina. So thanks so much, Dr. Tina, today for sharing all the amazing knowledge and information. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I've had so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.